You know, every successful software team eventually hits the same wall. That amazing, rock-solid application that got you to where you are today, well, it starts to creak and groan under its own weight. We're going to talk about that wall and, more importantly, how to smash right through it. Let's dive into the journey from monoliths to microservices.
So let me ask you this. Does your codebase, the one that brought you all this success, sometimes feel more like a tangled mess than a well-oiled machine? Do simple changes take way longer than they should to get out the door? If you're sitting there nodding your head, yeah, you're definitely in the right place.
These are the classic signs, right? Deployments that used to be a breeze now feel like this huge, scary event. A tiny bug in one little corner of the app somehow takes down a completely unrelated feature. And this one is my favorite. You have to spin up massive servers for the entire app just because one little feature went viral. And of course, your teams are constantly tripping over each other in the same code. It's not just annoying, it's actively slowing you down. What we're really talking about here is hitting the monolithic breaking point. The very architecture that was your superpower at the start is now starting to hold you back. Let's dig into what that actually means. A monolith is pretty much what it sounds like. One giant single piece of code. Your user interface, your payment processing, your customer profiles, everything is in one big project, deployed as a single unit. And look, let's be super clear, this is an awesome way to start a project. It's fast to build, it's simple to debug on your own machine, and you don't have a lot of moving parts to worry about. But as we've seen, that beautiful simplicity has an expiration date. So, if the monolith is the problem when you scale, then what's the solution? Well, this is where we get to talk about the next step in the evolutionary chain, a totally different way of thinking about how we build our software.
And here they are, microservices. Instead of one giant application, you build a whole collection of small specialized services. The real magic word here is independently deployable. Each service handles one specific job, and it can be developed, tested, deployed, and scaled all by itself, without ever bothering its neighbors.
This table really tells the whole story, doesn't it? You start with a monolith because, hey, it's fast and it's simple. But then the pain starts to set in. Those long deployment times, the high blast radius where one little bug can take down everything. That's your cue to start looking at microservices, which promise things like independent scaling and way safer deployments. But, and this is a big but, look at the requirements on the right. This move isn't free. You absolutely need strong APIs, great observability to see what's going on, and top-notch automation. All right, so the benefits sound pretty great, but how in the world do you actually get from here to there? I mean, the idea of carving up a live application that's making you money, that can be downright terrifying. The good news is you don't have to do it all at once. There's a safe, gradual way to get there. Okay, this right here, this is the most important rule of all. A big bang rewrite, where you stop everything to rebuild from scratch, is almost always a recipe for failure. It's risky, it takes forever, and the business can't just stop for 2 years while you work. The only way to do this that actually works is to migrate piece by piece, slowly and carefully.
And this is what that step-by-step path generally looks like. First, you gotta find the logical seams in your application. We call those bounded contexts. Then, you use this really cool pattern to safely replace the old system, which we'll talk about in a second. You always start by pulling out the parts that read data before the parts that write data, just to be safe. Then comes the really tricky bit, carefully splitting up that one giant database. And finally, you start using asynchronous communication to make everything more resilient. Now, let's zoom in on that pattern that makes this all possible.
It's called the Strangler fig pattern, and the name is just perfect. It's named after a type of vine that wraps itself around a tree, and over time, it completely replaces the tree. In our world, this means you build your shiny new microservices around your old monolith. You slowly reroute traffic, feature by feature, to the new services until eventually the old code isn't being used at all. It's this beautiful, elegant strategy that lets you migrate with zero downtime. It's a game changer. Okay, so you've done the hard work. You've migrated a few services. What does your day-to-day life actually look like now? Let's talk about the operational reality. So here's a classic situation. Your marketing team absolutely crushes it with a new campaign, and boom, one of your features is seeing 10 times the normal traffic. In the old monolith world, you'd be panicking trying to scale up the entire application, but in the world of microservices, just one. That's it. You find the single service responsible for that one feature, and you scale only that one service. It's incredibly efficient, it saves a ton of money, and it leaves the rest of your system running smoothly. That right there is the power of selective scaling. And what about when things break? Because things always break.
In a monolith, one faulty component can bring the whole house down. With microservices, failures are contained. If your product recommendation service goes down, well, your users can still buy things. You can use patterns like a circuit breaker, which is exactly what it sounds like. It trips and stops sending traffic to a failing service, so the rest of the app can keep working. This allows your app to degrade gracefully, which is a fancy way of saying it still works, just maybe without all the bells and whistles for a little while.
Now, it's really easy to get excited about all these benefits, but I have to be honest, microservices are not a silver bullet. It is so important to have a balanced view and really understand the trade-offs before you dive in headfirst. And here is the fundamental trade-off. A monolith is simple. The operational overhead is low, and that is a massive advantage when you're starting out. But it's really hard to scale your teams. Microservices, on the other hand, are designed to scale both teams and traffic. But the price you pay is a huge increase in operational complexity. Suddenly, you're not just managing one application, you're managing a complex, distributed system, and that's just a fundamentally harder problem to solve. But what if you're not ready for all that complexity? Well, there's a fantastic middle ground called the modular monolith. You can think of it as getting the best of both worlds. It's still one single application that you deploy all at once, which keeps your operations simple, but inside that one code base, you create super strict logical boundaries between the different modules, almost like they were microservices. This gives you that clean separation and team ownership without the full-blown headache of managing a distributed network. Okay, we have covered a ton of ground, the why, the what, and the how. Now it's time to turn all this theory into something real. What's the very first thing you can do when you're done with this? Here's your action plan. Go back to your team, get a whiteboard, and literally draw a diagram of your application's modules. Find those natural seams. Then, pick one. Pick a low-risk candidate to be your first microservice. Something that mostly just reads data is a perfect first choice. Design an API for it, plan for it to have its own database, and map out exactly how you're going to use that Strangler fig pattern to make the switch. So I'll leave you with this final thought to chew on. Take a hard look at your own system, your own monolith. What is the one piece, that one business function, that's just screaming to be broken out on its own? Finding that first piece, that's the beginning of your own architectural evolution.